Hello everyone, this is International Master Robert Jamieson from Kids Unlimited in Melbourne, Australia. And I've been following an online tournament, the Gold Coast Open, which also incorporates the Australian Championship. So the top finishing Australian will be the new Australian champion. And there's been some interesting games. The favourite is Timur Kubrakov. And today I want to show you a short game he played against a player rated 400 or 500 points below him. Now, if you're the stronger player and you want to beat your opponent, the first thing you have to do is try and unbalance the position. So you get some sort of imbalance, maybe material versus the initiative or bishop versus a knight, something like that. Then, once you've unbalanced the position, hopefully you can seize the initiative, put your opponent under pressure and outplay him. So much of chess is the battle for the initiative. So let's have a quick look at today's game. Timur is playing black. So it starts off as a Grunfeld defense. Now normally here you play e4, which looks like the logical move, but white plays an okay but slightly different line, bishop d2. Presumably you'd play bishop g7, but Timur decides to attack the centre straight away with c5. Leads to a swap off. Okay, now white looks like he's going great here. He's got pawn in the middle, two pieces developed. He's threatening queen takes rook. So black's pretty much obliged to swap queens. And now if he moves the rook, he can't castle kingside, or he can block the bishop's attack, which sort of looks a little bit awkward for his future king placement and developing the black squared bishop. Now, what would you play as white here? Clearly we're trying to develop our men, so the question is which man and which square. White decided to develop his bishop, and he decided bishop b5 check. Probably bishop c4 is a better spot for the bishop. I mean, this diagonal has been opened. Bishop b5 check. I mean, if you end up swapping a piece, black's going to recapture with a developing move. Now, how should black block? Bishop d7 looks reasonable, but Timur chose knight d7. So now if we get in a situation where white has to play bishop takes knight, we've unbalanced the position slightly. We have a bishop against the knight. Now, white has a big decision here. I'll give you a choice of two moves. So option one, he has the move e5 with a nasty threat of e6 and opening up the position a bit. Or he can just play safe and keep developing, put his knight on e2. So have a little think about it. Which move would you choose? Okay. In the game, white went e5. Perhaps his eyes lit up and he thought, I'm playing a high-rated opponent. This looks good. This is a chance for me to win a pawn or threaten to win a pawn. I'm attacking. This looks good for me. But, I mean, if you wanted to play safe, you just put your knight on e2, you play pawn to f3, symmetrical pawn structure, you're ahead in development. You're going pretty well towards getting a draw, I would have thought. But white's eyes lit up. He's going for e5. Let's see what happens. So black decides a6, attacking the bishop. White goes pawn takes pawn. Now, clearly, if pawn takes bishop, we can do pawn check and win the rook in the corner, so that would be pretty disastrous. So we take back. All right, now, look, I can play bishop takes knight and win a free pawn, attacking the rook, or I can be a wimp and retreat. What do you think? Probably he should be a wimp and retreat. It's still a pretty even position. He's going to play knight f3 and castles or something. We're going okay. But he wants to win the pawn. So now he has swapped bishop for knight. Black has the two bishops. white has a pawn and he's attacking the rook. Pawn up, attacking the rook. I think that'll be all right. But alas, black doesn't have to move the rook. He gives a check. Now, if you move your king somewhere, king f1, black could just castle. He's attacking the bishop, and he's got a lot of play for that little pawn. So white runs back, and now we can take. All right, so we have an imbalance. White is a pawn ahead. That's true. But look at that bishop. Bishop on an open board, play on both sides of the board. The bishop is going to be better than the knight. And white has weakened pawns. He's got a weak pawn on c3, weak pawn on a2. Black can possibly get the pawn back. What would you play as black? A couple of good moves. Castles are probably all right, but the obvious move is to attack g2 and put the bishop in a lovely spot there. All right, now we've given white a choice. Does he block with f3? Does he block with knight f3? If we play knight f3, I think black could probably just take it. Castles queenside. Maybe white castles or something. Look here. We're getting our pawn back. We're going to have a better pawn structure. It's going to be slight edge black. Sometimes you need to know when to bail out, though. Sometimes accept a little disadvantage, bail out, fight on, you might get a draw. Or you can try and hang on to your extra pawn and whatever you think your advantage is. So he goes f3. All right. Black's got a pretty obvious move now. Castles. So he's got the rook activated. And he's threatening rook e8 check with a free activation there. So what would you play as white? Got to get your men out somehow. And your king's in a bit of a pickle. And maybe that pawn on c3 is going to be attacked. What do you reckon you should do? All right. Probably he should forget about this c3 pawn. There is this move. The idea being rook check, king is going to come here. Maybe rook check, we can come here. And knight can come out this way. We can defend this pawn. We drop this pawn. It's not the end of the world. But white develops his knight. And now logically black pins it. Now he has subtle threat of bishop b5 winning a piece. How do we get out of it? We've given white alternatives. He could play a4 to stop bishop b5. He could play rook here, to play rook here, get out of it. He could play rook here to play rook here to get out of it. Choice of 3. This is probably the best one. He chose rook f1. All right, so logically we pin the knight, rook f2 forced. Right, so white has lovely pieces. It's got black has lovely pieces rather. White is under pressure. How can black improve his position? So, what do you think? Look around. Which piece can you improve? Bishop c4. So now your bishop's still on the knight, but now you've got this a2 pawn under pressure as well. You could have played rook here and perhaps threatened this. That would be another idea. White should probably just ditch the pawn, try and swap off a pair of rooks. Have a slightly worse endgame. But he tries to hang on to his pawn. All right. Which piece can we improve now? Clearly this rook needs to do something. Here would be pretty good. Timur chose rook d5. White played rook c1 and then rook b5. So clearly we wish to get our rook to b2, winning a piece. Right. What would you play as white? How to get out of the threat? Probably only 2 real options worth thinking about. One is rook here. That was to answer rook b2 with rook d2. Black can go here and pick up a pawn anytime he feels like it. But I'm guessing a lot of you would have chosen instead rook c2, which is what white chose in the game. Terrible blunder, terrible blunder. Black to play. What would you do? Can you see the tactic? Pause the video if you like. Okay, black played rook check, king up. Looks like everything's defended. Maybe we could play rook here and win the pawn back. Can you see a good move for black? Yes, Timur played this fantastic move. Rook f1. Please take my free rook. Not much choice. Take free rook. Check. King down. Takes rook, takes rook, takes rook. For a piece up for a pawn. We win easily. So that was pretty easy, wasn't it? 27 moves. We knocked him off. So what did we do? We unbalanced the position when white foolishly tried to get an advantage of an extra pawn for himself, as opposed to just completing his development and playing solidly. We've got our pieces in nice spots, got the initiative, put him under pressure, and he kept choosing slightly inferior moves, and it was all over. So hopefully you can apply a similar strategy in your games. See you in the next video.